All right, good afternoon. Thank you for your patience. We are delighted to welcome to the briefing room Bob Ray, who, as you know, is the president of the Economic and Social Council and also the permanent representative of Canada to these United Nations. And next to him is Navid Hanif, the Assistant Secretary General in the Department of Economic and Social Affairs. They're here to brief you on the ECOSOC Forum on Financing for Development, which is taking place at headquarters and which the Secretary General addressed earlier today. Ambassador, please. It's on, don't worry.
It's on, okay, good. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming and for joining us. Very happy to answer your questions in both English and French. As you know, this forum is part of a process that has been underway for some considerable time, where the issue of how we finance successful development has been with us for years. We had many discussions during COVID when we had an active conversation about what more we could do. And ECOSOC throughout the piece has been having a regular meeting, which has included representatives of the IFIs, and we try to schedule it in conjunction with the IFI meetings in Washington so we can have much more of a dialogue. The strength that we have is that obviously as a UN we have universal participation, and we also have this week we have many ministers of finance, foreign affairs, development and planning, as you will have heard this morning, and we've had several conversations and dialogues, fireside chats, expert panels, which will also connect up this year for the first time with the Financing for Development 4, which, as you know, is the meeting that's taking place in Sevilla in Spain at the end of June, beginning of July. And this is, a critical moment for us to be coming together as a world to present some plans that will take us forward into the future. I think we all recognize that we are meeting at a critical point, and there has long been a significant financing gap between what is required and what is happening. We're a long way off on the SDGs. We know there are many rising global challenges, including debt and distress, climate shocks, economic uncertainty, and increasing geopolitical instability. I think it's also fair to say that recent developments on tariffs and trade have increased and are worsening trade tensions and economic tensions and dramatically slowing down economic growth around the world. The forum will not only involve dealing with FFD4, but also allow us to have a special high-level meeting with the Bretton Woods institutions, with the World Trade Organization, and with UNCTAD. Tomorrow we're going to have a dialogue with some 30 executive directors of the World Bank Group and the IMF to discuss how our two institutions can join hands and work more effectively together. So this is, I think, the product of a lot of effort that we've made over the last several months and indeed years to increase the dialogue between the international financial institutions and the United Nations. As you know, there's plans for a biennial summit, which will be taking place in the fall, which will, I think, represent the culmination of this effort that we've been making to make sure that all the institutions of the UN and the UN system are able to work together in dealing with our common economic and social challenges, which are huge. So thank you very much for coming, and I'm delighted that my colleague from UNDESA, Mr. Hanif, is with us, and we look forward to a good discussion.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for joining us. Mr. President has captured the primary objective of the forum and the fourth conference on financing for development, which will be held in June in Sevilla in Spain. I just want to flag the issues that are right at the center of conversation today and tomorrow, where the World Bank, the IMF executive directors and ministers are coming together to look at, first and foremost, the challenges Sustainable Development goals are off track, some in reverse mode. Climate change, so $4 trillion per year gap. So financing gap, first issue comes up, debt distress. 68 countries are at some degree of risk to go into serious debt distress. 10 are already in high debt distress. Their debt servicing burden is now $1.4 trillion. And debt service now exceeds 10% of government revenue in more than 50 developing countries and more than 20% in 17 countries. And these are signs of imminent debt default. So they are defaulting on development to stay away from debt defaults, and that's one issue on the table. Second is domestic resource mobilization, which is tax revenues. We need international cooperation, and the forum will have serious conversation on that. Third is massive investment push is needed, public and private, and how do we mobilize private investment where it is badly needed, in energy transition, in digital transition. And lastly, international development cooperation, which is about concessional finance. There are many countries, 26 low-income countries, who need concessional finance to meet their day-to-day budgetary needs. And then financial architecture, which also means efficiency, avoidance of duplication, and better impact in alignment with the SDGs. So these are issues that the forum is discussing. We'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Evelyn? Your microphone, please.
Oh, yes, that would help, wouldn't it? Good afternoon. Welcome on behalf of the UN Correspondent Association. I'm Evelyn Leopold from the Dag Hammarskjöld Fund for Journalists. Ambassador Ray, considering what's happening in Canada today, you're going to be around longer, or does this not affect your job? And secondly, considering what a superpower is doing financially, how difficult has it put an enormous strain on the kind of money you want to raise? Because you need a lot for that conference and coming up in June.
On the first point, I don't think there's much I can say. I think we're all Canadians are looking forward to the results of the election tonight, and my position is, I'm sure, the least important of those questions. So we'll just have to see what happens. But I'm going to be continuing my work as president of ECOSOC right up until the end of July, and after that, no decisions have been made. I look forward to hearing the answer to your question at some point. I think it's fair to say that the current position of the administration has made all of our lives more difficult and interesting as we try to figure out how we get to the best possible place we can get to in here at the UN and in Seville and all the other conferences that we're having. But I do think there's this powerful common sense among all the member states that it's better for us to reach positive conclusions than not. And I took some comfort in the statement from the United States last week that they plan to continue to participate fully in the life of the World Bank and the IMF, which I think is a very positive indicator.
Thank you. Any other questions? Online? You've left them in stunned silence.
That's it. Everybody's happy. You don't need any additional comments?
Stefano, your microphone, please. Thank you.
I ask you what kind of question you would like or you expected today to be asked.
Well, I think one of the critical questions that we're facing is, and Navid really referred to this, the Secretary General did as well this morning, is just that it's so important that in all of the efforts that the advanced economies are making to deal with their own problems, that we not lose sight of the problems that we all have in common. And it's particularly important that we remain very, very focused on the global nature of the challenges we face. There is no national solution to these problems. There can only be global solutions. And I think it's really, really important that we not lose sight. When you see how quickly governments can raise money for certain purposes, or how they can respond to immediate economic crises, or you see how they can respond to the call for greater security, that seems to happen without much time being spent thinking about it. But when you think of the broader issues of what is happening to the global economy, to the barriers that have been created by the tariffs, which are not taking us in the right direction at all, to the level of uncertainty which now exists in the global economy, and to many countries facing debt distress now, not later, not tomorrow, but now, it, I think, is critically important that particularly the people living in the advanced economies continue to feel that they have a global responsibility because it's in their interest, not because they're doing something that's nice to do, but because a global recession, or even worse, the kinds of crises that we're seeing globally, global insecurity, these things all come home to roost in all of our countries. They're not abstractions. They're not out there somewhere else. They're not happening in distant places that don't impact us, quote, at home. They affect all of us. And it's in every government's interest to respond to these in a more positive way. And I think it's critical for us here at the UN to be one of the key places in the world where these issues are discussed.
Quick follow-up. Just
Quick follow-up to my question.
see to your question, to your imaginary question. Well, we sometimes we see certain agency of the UN. I'm just thinking UNICEF, for example, that they do a kind of public relation advertising. People are aware of those agencies, what they do. So would you be open to, even if you have now a budget that is always less, but to dedicate some of that budget that you have to, especially in this country, to just what you say, for example, to tell to Americans how important is that what you just said, and that the UN keep doing what it's doing, because I think the majority of people out there don't know what are you doing.
I think that's a good point. Yes, I would agree with that, totally. I do think we have to communicate with the global public about why it's important for us to remain committed to the approaches that we're taking. And it's for precisely the reason that I've given, and that is that I think for many people, it's not clear how is it that the insecurity that's taking place in Haiti, for example, or in other parts of the world, why should someone care about that? And the answer is because it's in your direct interest to care about it, because it affects your security. And if you think it's far away and it won't affect your security, you're sadly mistaken. It will. And the amount of global insecurity that is being created by the current uncertainty is enormous. And it's not good for the world. It's not good for markets. It's not good for people's sense of economic security. It's not good for anything. But I think you're right. It's not enough for me to say this at a press conference. I think we need to develop a more effective plan of communication. I do agree with that.
Thank you. Farnoosh?
Farnoosh Shamiri with the Associated Press. Following up on that kind of line of questioning, what is your question? What is the larger conversations that folks on this, through this forum, but also member states are having about, the tough discussions about what would happen if the U.S. does follow through and retreat on global assistance as it is doing, through USAID, and, I and others have reported are planning on doing the same through international organizations, who could pick up the tab, and are those countries able to? I mean, obviously, the EU is having difficult conversations about taking away from humanitarian assistance to put into their military assistance, given the war in Ukraine. What are those conversations, both publicly and privately, and who could pick up the tab for a funder like the U.S.?
Well, let me just say, I just returned from a trip as president of ECOSOC to the major European capitals, UN headquarters, and in Africa as well. And I can tell you that the cuts that are being made are not theoretical or maybe. They're being made today. They're being made all the time. They're having an immediate, devastating impact on the well-being of the people of the world. And it's what's happening is terrible. We're cutting rations in refugee camps. We're seeing people going without food. We can see all of the various scientific indices that we have telling us, how much food do people need, and none of those things are being met. All these challenges are facing us right now. I think every capital of an advanced economy that is normally a donor is having a debate about what can they do, what can we do, but there's no one country that can substitute for the efforts that the United States has been making over the last 80 years. And I think we all need to understand that, the bottom has fallen out. The world is turned upside down. What more do I have to say to describe how serious the situation is? And I don't think any of the rest of us should be following suit. I think it would be a terrible mistake if that were to happen. I think we all have an obligation to provide for the needs of the whole world. And I also think we have an obligation to think about the consequences of withdrawal, of isolationism, or it becomes open season out there for anybody else who's out there to cause havoc and to make life even more difficult and more insecure. And it also means that the world as a whole becomes less of a safe place, and it means we have less capacity globally to deal with the problems we have in common. And we need to understand that these are common problems and therefore need to be dealt with in common. So we can't wait for the United States to make up its mind as to what kind of a player it wants to be in the world. We have an obligation ourselves. Each one of our governments has an obligation to say, what are we going to do to make sure that the public good is not totally forgotten, and that the well-being of the world is not forgotten, and that our common security is not forgotten. And that is something to which we attach a lot of attention. And certainly as the president of ECOSOC, I will be continuing to talk about this very publicly, because I think it's my job to do that, because of the responsibilities that I have leading the economic and social conversations at the United Nations. I'm going to continue to do that.
Thank you very much, sir. Navid, thank you. Ambassador Ray, thank you. And we'll go on with the scheduled briefing in just a moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for allowing me to answer my own question.
I said this will become the new standard. I think I will only ask questions now. Thank you.
It's like the Rabbi Hillel, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not for myself, who will be for me?
Yeah.
Nice to see you. Thanks. Thanks.
Enjoy your
See you
evening.
later.
Yeah.